Commander Zirax Qualorn rubbed his 3 primary eye stalks in frustration. The lighting aboard the Galactic Conclave flagship Righteous Dominance always gave him a migraine. Or perhaps it was just the humans. By the 7 moons of Travelax, he muttered, slamming his tentacle onto the control panel. How did they know? How? His second-in-command, Lieutenant Velk Thorian, flinched at the outburst. The young Pluridian's skin flickered from its normal azure to a nervous pale yellow. "Commander," Velk said carefully. "Perhaps we underestimated the humans again." Zirax swiveled his eye stalks to glare at Velk. "Underestimated? Underestimated? We have the combined intelligence networks of 27 galactic species. We employed the finest deception strategists from the Mendaxian hive. The peace treaty was perfect. Perfect. The view screen before them displayed the catastrophic scene. The Conclave's supposedly secret armada, and intended to strike Earth and its colonies simultaneously after the signing of the peace treaty, was now scattered across 3 sectors. Escape pods, debris fields, and damaged vessels littered space. At least 60% of their fleet was destroyed or disabled, and the worst part, the humans had sent a single message across all channels just before the attack. "Nice try, better luck next time." "Commander," Velk ventured, "Admiral Grax is requesting to speak with you. He's rather upset." Zirax made a sound like a garbage disposal trying to process a metal fork. "Of course he is. Put him through on my private channel, and get me all the intelligence we have on human detection capabilities." As Velk scurried away, Zirax slumped into his command chair. How had it come to this? The Galactic Conclave had existed for millennia, peacefully incorporating new species into its fold. Then came the humans, so primitive yet so disturbing. "Commander Qualorn." The booming voice of Admiral Grax thundered through his neural implant. "Explain this disaster immediately." Zirax winced. "Admiral, we followed the protocol exactly. The peace treaty negotiations lasted for 3 standard cycles. Our diplomats were instructed to make reasonable concessions. The humans appeared completely convinced. Their representatives even celebrated with that disgusting fermented grain liquid they enjoy. Yet somehow," Grax rumbled, "they positioned defensive fleets at every single one of our intended attack coordinates. Not just defensive postures, Qualorn, ambushes. They were waiting for us." Zirax's skin paled. "I know, Admiral. We're gathering intelligence now to determine how our security was breached." "Find answers, Qualorn. The Supreme Council is convened in 6 cycles. If you value your career and your respiratory privileges, you will have answers by then." The connection terminated abruptly, leaving Zirax alone with his growing dread. The command center buzzed with frantic activity as analysts from various species pored over data, communications logs, and intelligence reports. Zirax paced the floor, occasionally stopping to review findings over an analyst's shoulder. "Nothing, Commander," exclaimed Trill Devon, the Conclave's foremost cryptography expert. Her antennae twitched with agitation. "Our communications were flawlessly encrypted. The humans couldn't have intercepted our attack plans." "What about spies? Infiltrators?" demanded Zirax. Gregor Blex, head of counterintelligence, shook his massive horned head. "Impossible. The final attack coordinates were only distributed to fleet commanders using isolated quantum networks. No leaks." Zirax slammed his appendage onto a nearby console. "There must be something. Humans are barely space-capable compared to most conclave species. They still use chemical propellants in some of their ships, for void's sake." At that moment, Velk burst into the command center, clutching a datapad. His skin had turned an alarming shade of green, the Pluridian equivalent of a human going pale with shock. "Commander," Velk gasped. "I found something. You need to see this immediately." Zirax snatched the pad and began reading. His eye stalks extended to their full length in surprise, then drooped in dismay. This can't be right," he whispered. "I verified it 3 times. Velk confirmed. It appears the humans have been intercepting our communications for years. But how?" Trill demanded, grabbing the pad. "Our encryption is They weren't breaking our encryption, Velk explained. They were reading our body language. A stunned silence fell over the command center. That's absurd, Rigger finally sputtered. No species can possibly. Look at the evidence, Velk insisted. Human diplomatic teams always included what they called cultural attaches. We assumed they were there to learn our customs. But they were behavioral analysts, studying our micro-expressions, posture changes, pheromone releases, skin pigmentation shifts. Zirax collapsed into a chair as the implications sank in. The humans, they can tell when we're lying. Not with perfect accuracy, Velk clarified, but with enough precision to suspect the peace treaty was fraudulent. And once suspicious, they apparently assigned resources to monitor our fleet movements. But that's not the worst part, Velk continued, his voice dropping. According to this psychological analysis, the humans knew we were planning a betrayal, and they deliberately let the peace negotiations proceed. What? Zirax's eye stalks crossed in confusion. Why would they do that? Velk's skin turned a deep purple, the color of dread, to learn our tactics, to test their defenses, and to justify their response. As if on cue, the command center's emergency alert system blared to life. The main view screen activated automatically, displaying tactical information from across conclave space. No, Zirax whispered. They wouldn't dare. But the tactical display told the horrifying truth. Human fleets had appeared near 7 key conclave worlds, not colony worlds or military bases, cultural centers, historical archives, and civilian hubs. This is Admiral Katerina Volkov of the United Earth Fleet, announced a calm, almost pleasant human voice over the emergency channel. The Galactic Conclave has committed an act of war against humanity by attempting a coordinated surprise attack following the signing of a peace treaty. Under normal circumstances, this would justify a full military response. The human paused, allowing her words to sink in. However, humanity is not interested in unnecessary bloodshed. We are positioning our fleets near your civilian centers not to attack them, but to demonstrate that we could. We have the capability to strike at your heart, just as you attempted to strike at ours. Zirax felt his hydrostatic skeleton weakening. The presumption, the arrogance. Consider this a negotiating position, Admiral Volkov continued. We are prepared to discuss a genuine peace treaty, one actually intended to be honored. Our fleets will remain in position for 48 Earth hours. You have until then to decide whether you prefer peace or further demonstrations of our capabilities. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Commander, Velk said quietly, there's more. Analysis of human historical records shows this is a standard tactic for them. They call it speaking softly and carrying a big stick. It appears they prefer to resolve conflicts through diplomacy backed by the threat of force, rather than force itself. Zirax stared at the tactical display, watching the human fleets holding position with disciplined precision. They're giving us a chance to save face, he realized aloud. They could have launched a counterattack but chose this instead. Why? Perhaps, suggested an elderly analyst named Gerda Fenix from the back of the room. We have fundamentally misunderstood humans from the beginning. All eyes turned to Gerda, a Ventosian historian who had studied pre-contact species for over a century. Please explain, Historian Fenix, Zirax requested, desperate for any insight. Gerda's translucent membranes fluttered as she stepped forward. The Conclave saw humans as dangerous because they evolved on a death world with thousands of predators. We assumed this made them inherently aggressive and untrustworthy. But consider the implications. To survive on such a world, humans needed to cooperate with each other. They needed to build trust within their social groups. So? Demanded Rigger. So? Ricoso. Gerda continued patiently. Humans are not just skilled at detecting deception, they're fundamentally offended by it. In their culture, honoring agreements is considered a moral virtue. By presenting a false peace treaty, we didn't just attempt a strategic deception. We committed what humans consider a grievous moral wrong. Zirax felt a creeping horror. Are you saying we inadvertently committed a cultural atrocity? Precisely. Gerda nodded. And now they're responding in a way that makes sense within their moral framework. They're giving us a chance to correct our behavior rather than simply punishing us for it. Velk's skin had shifted to a thoughtful blue. The intelligence reports did mention that humans place unusual emphasis on concepts like second chances and redemption. "Commander," called out a communications officer, "the Supreme Council is demanding an update. They want to know if we should mobilize the reserve fleets." Zirax looked around the command center at his team, then back at the tactical display showing the human fleet's deadly, patient, and exercising remarkable restraint. "Tell the Council," he said slowly, "that I recommend accepting the humans' offer to negotiate, and this time I suggest we try something revolutionary." "What's that, Commander?" asked Velk. Zirax's eye stalks aligned in determination. "Honesty." 3 days later, Zirax found himself aboard the human diplomatic vessel Transparency, floating in neutral space between Earth and the nearest conclave world. The ship's name felt like a pointed message. The human diplomatic team sat across the table, led by Ambassador Diana Kovacs, thus a silver-haired woman with piercing green eyes that seemed to look right through Zirax's exoskeleton. Beside her sat the intimidating Admiral Volkov, still wearing her fleet uniform, and Dr. Marcus Jackson, introduced as a xenocultural specialist, but whom Zirax now recognized as one of those behavior-reading experts. "Commander Qualorn," Ambassador Kovacs began, "we appreciate the Conclave sending such a high-ranking military official. It signals the seriousness with which you're approaching these negotiations." Zirax fidgeted, uncomfortably aware that Dr. Jackson was probably analyzing his every movement. The Supreme Council felt a military perspective was appropriate, given recent events. Admiral Volkov's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Indeed. Nothing says we want peace quite like an ambush fleet, does it?" "Admiral," Kovacs said mildly, though Zirax detected no real rebuke in her tone. "My apologies for the sarcasm, Commander," Volkov said, not sounding particularly apologetic, and old habits from the battlefield. "Before we begin formal negotiations," Kovacs continued, "we thought it might be helpful to clear the air. We know the Conclave attempted to deceive us. We know why. What we'd like to understand is whether you're ready to try a different approach." Zirax felt his 3 hearts pounding erratically. This was it, the moment of truth, quite literally. The Supreme Council had given him limited authorization to explore alternate diplomatic strategies. They hadn't explicitly authorized complete honesty, but after the disaster of their first approach, Zirax was willing to take some initiative. "Ambassador Kovacs," he began, choosing his words carefully, "the Galactic Conclave has existed for over 12,000 years. In that time, we have incorporated hundreds of species into our collective governance structure. Never before have we encountered a species that caused such concern." "Concern?" Dr. Jackson inquired, his voice neutral but his eyes sharp. "Your adaptability, your technological progression rate, your resource consumption patterns, your history of internal conflicts. All these factors led our predictive models to classify humanity as a potential existential threat to Conclave stability." Zirax paused, then added, "The peace treaty deception was recommended by our strategic algorithms as the optimal approach to neutralizing this threat with minimal casualties." He braced himself for outrage, but instead the humans exchanged glances that contained, "Was that amusement?" "Commander," Ambassador Kovacs said, "did it ever occur to the Conclave to simply tell us about these concerns?" Zirax blinked all 6 of his eyes in succession. "Aye, that approach was considered but deemed unlikely to succeed. Our models suggested humans would react defensively and accelerate military preparations." Admiral Volkov actually laughed. "Your models need updating, Commander. Humanity has been paranoid about first contact scenarios for centuries. Our science fiction is full of stories about advanced aliens wiping us out. Frankly, we were suspicious precisely because your initial diplomatic overtures seemed too accommodating." "Too accommodating." Zirax was struggling to follow this logic. "Commander, Dr. Jackson explained, when someone who has no reason to trust you immediately offers everything you want, human instinct says it's a trap. Had you approached us with honest concerns about our place in the galactic community and proposed gradual integration with reasonable safeguards, we would have considered that far more credible. Zirax felt as though his understanding of the universe was crumbling around him. You're saying our attempt at deception failed because it wasn't suspicious enough? All three humans nodded. Honesty. Daisy. Ambassador Kovacs said gently, doesn't require you to be naive or to abandon caution. It just means building relationships on truth rather than lies. The irony is that by attempting to neutralize us through deception, you've confirmed humanity's worst fears about advanced alien civilizations. As Zirax processed this bewildering information, Admiral Volkov leaned forward, her expression now serious. Commander, I'll be blunt. Our fleets remain in position near your civilian centers. We don't want to use them. But make no mistake, if the Conclave attempts another deception, our response won't be as measured. We're prepared to defend ourselves by any means necessary. However, Ambassador Kovacs interjected, we genuinely believe there's a path forward that benefits both humanity and the Conclave. We're prepared to discuss technological exchange restrictions, expansion rate limitations, mutual defense pacts, whatever reasonable measures would alleviate your concerns while respecting our sovereignty. Zirax looked from one human face to another, searching for signs of deception but finding none that his limited training could detect. Then, finally, he made his decision. Ambassador Kovacs, Admiral Volkov, Dr. Jackson, he said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Conclave, I propose we restart these negotiations with complete transparency. I am authorized to share our actual concerns, our true capabilities, and our genuine desires for the future relationship between humanity and the Conclave. For the first time since the meeting began, all three humans smiled genuine smiles that reached their eyes. Commander Qualorn. Ambassador Kovacs replied, humanity accepts your proposal. Let's begin again this time with the truth. 6 months after the failed Conclave attack, Commander Zirax Qualorn found himself in a position he never could have anticipated. Cultural Liaison Officer to Earth. You want me to try what? Zirax exclaimed, staring in horror at the steaming mug Ambassador Kovacs had placed before him. Coffee, she replied with an innocent smile. It's practically a diplomatic requirement on Earth. Don't worry. Our xenobiologists confirmed it's safe for your physiology. They sat in the human embassy on Nexus Station, the newly established neutral diplomatic hub orbiting between Earth and Conclave space. Large viewport windows revealed the busy traffic of vessels from both civilizations, cautiously conducting the first real trade and cultural exchanges. Zirax reluctantly extended a sensory tentacle toward the dark liquid. It smells like industrial solvent, he complained. That's the good kind, Admiral Volkov remarked as she entered the conference room. Her uniform now sported additional decorations. Apparently, foiling an alien invasion attempt was good for one's career prospects. Zirax retracted his tentacle without tasting the coffee. I'll trust your assessment, Admiral. Coward, she replied, but her tone held no malice. Over the past months, a strange sort of camaraderie had developed between them. The Supreme Council representatives have arrived. Are you ready? Zirax's skin rippled with nervous patterns, as ready as one can be when facing the possibility of execution for treason. Kovacs frowned. Surely they wouldn't. It was a joke, Ambassador, Zirax clarified. It's a poor attempt at human humor. Though the Supreme Council is indeed displeased with my recent recommendations. The truth was, Zirax had gone far beyond his original instructions. After those first honest negotiations, he had become convinced that humanity and the Conclave could not only coexist but actually benefit from cooperation. His reports back to the Council had become increasingly enthusiastic about human potential, which some councilors viewed as borderline species treason. Displeased or not, they still sent Councilor Vex Arboran himself, Volkov noted, that suggests they're taking this seriously. Zirax's eye stalks quivered. Councilor Arboran rarely leaves the Conclave capital. His presence is significant. A chime announced the imminent arrival of the Supreme Council delegation. Zirax straightened his ceremonial vestments and tried to project confidence. Everything depended on this meeting. Absolutely unacceptable, thundered Counselor Arborin, his massive form seeming to fill the entire conference room despite its generous proportions. His species, the Arborins, resembled what humans might describe as sentient sequoia trees, with bark-like skin and branch-like upper limbs that currently trembled with indignation. The technological exchange protocol clearly stated that gravity manipulation technology would not be included in the first phase sharing, he continued. Yet we discover humans operating gravity-assisted mining platforms in their asteroid belt. This violation cannot stand. Dr. Jackson, now serving as head of Xenotechnology Integration, calmly pulled up a holographic display. Counselor, with respect, those platforms use centrifugal force, not true gravity manipulation. If you examine the engineering specifications. As the technical debate continued, Zirax observed the reactions around the table. The human representatives remained composed, presenting evidence without defensiveness. The conclave delegation, including scientists and security experts, appeared increasingly perplexed as their accusations were systematically addressed. Furthermore, Arborin pressed on, our surveillance indicates human population expansion has exceeded the agreed settlement quotas by nearly 8%. Ambassador Kovacs raised an eyebrow. Surveillance, Counselor? The treaty specifically prohibits covert monitoring. Are you acknowledging a violation on the Conclave's part? A tense silence fell over the room. Zirax winced internally. This was exactly the kind of confrontation he had hoped to avoid. To his surprise, Arborin's rigid posture softened slightly. An unfortunate choice of words, Ambassador. Our treaty-compliant observation posts noted increased transport activity to your colony worlds. We merely calculated the probable population implications. Kovacs nodded. A reasonable misunderstanding, then. The increased traffic actually relates to our educational exchange program. We've been rotating colonists through Earth universities and technical institutes, then returning them with enhanced skills. The total population remains within agreed parameters. More displays appeared, showing detailed records of the transport ships and passenger manifests. Again, the evidence was comprehensive and transparent. Counselor Arborin's leafy crown drooped slightly, a sign of confusion in his species. He turned one massive eye toward Zirax. Commander Qualorn, you assured the Council that humans would attempt to circumvent treaty restrictions, yet at every turn, they provide reasonable explanations backed by verifiable data. Zirax felt the attention of both delegations fix on him. This was the moment he had been dreading and planning for. Counselor, he began carefully, my initial assessment was based on predictive models that, as we have discovered, failed to account for a fundamental aspect of human psychology. What aspect? Demanded Arborin. They want to be trusted. The statement hung in the air, simple yet profound. Elaborate, Arborin commanded. Zirax stood, activating his own display. I've spent 6 months studying human history, literature, and social structures. A consistent pattern emerges. Humans place extraordinary value on their reputation, not just as individuals but as a species. They are intensely aware of how they are perceived by others. The display showed various human cultural artifacts, ancient treaties carved in stone, handshake rituals, complex contract documents, oath-taking ceremonies. The failed deception of our peace treaty struck at something humans consider sacred, their word, when they promise something. They view breaking that promise as a stain on their collective honor. This drives a remarkable behavioral pattern. They often adhere to agreements, even when violation would provide short-term advantages. Admiral Volkov watched Zirax with an unreadable expression. You make us sound irrationally idealistic, Commander. Not irrational, Zirax corrected. Evolutionarily advantageous. On their dangerous homeworld, human tribes that maintained reliable reputations could form alliances and trade networks. Those that betrayed trust were isolated and eventually perished. This created powerful social selection pressures favoring trustworthiness. Counselor Arborin made a low rumbling sound, the Arborin equivalent of a thoughtful hum. If what you say is true, Commander, why did we detect indications of treaty violations? Because, Zirax replied, humans are not perfectly consistent. They have competing values: innovation, expansion, security. These sometimes conflict with their commitment to agreements. The critical difference is how they resolve such conflicts. He brought up new displays showing the human diplomatic team's internal communications, which they had voluntarily shared as part of the transparency protocols. When potential treaty conflicts arise, humans engage in something they call good faith interpretation. They seek ways to honor the spirit of an agreement while adapting to new circumstances. They don't ask, how can we get around this restriction? But rather, how can we respect this restriction while still meeting our needs? Zirax looked directly at Counselor Arborin. They're not trying to deceive us, Counselor. They're trying to build something unprecedented. An interspecies relationship based on mutual trust. A long silence followed as Arborin processed this information. Finally, he turned to the human delegation. Ambassador Kovacs, is Commander Qualorn's assessment accurate? Do humans truly place such importance on honoring agreements? Kovacs exchanged glances with her colleagues before responding. Counselor, I won't claim all humans are saints. We have our share of oath breakers and deceivers. But yes, as a civilization, we believe trustworthiness is essential for meaningful relationships, whether between individuals or species. Fascinating, murmured Arborin. And potentially valuable. The meeting continued for hours, addressing each concern methodically. To Zirax's relief, the atmosphere gradually shifted from confrontational to collaborative. By the end, Counselor Arborin had authorized the formation of a joint human conclave research initiative, something Zirax had advocated for months. As the delegations prepared to depart, Admiral Volkov pulled Zirax aside. That was quite a performance, Commander, she said quietly. You've become quite the human expert. Zirax's skin flushed with embarrassment patterns. I merely presented factual observations. Volkov's eyes narrowed slightly. And your recommendation that the Conclave share quantum communication technology with us? Was that also based on factual observations? Admiral, Zirax replied carefully. Quantum communication will benefit both our civilizations. The Conclave has refined the technology over millennia, but your scientists have proposed modifications that could increase efficiency by 20%. It's a collaboration. Save the diplomatic speech, Volkov interrupted. I want to know something, off the record. Where do your loyalties actually lie now, Commander? The question caught Zirax off guard. He pondered it for several seconds before answering. My loyalty is to a future where our civilizations thrive together rather than destroy each other, he finally said. Does that answer your question? Volkov studied him intently, then surprisingly, broke into a genuine smile. Actually, it does. And it's the right answer. She extended her hand in the human gesture of trust. I think we're going to work well together, Commander Qualorn. Zirax wrapped a tentacle around her hand in what still felt like an odd ritual. I believe we will, Admiral Volkov. 2 years later, Zirax stood on the observation deck of the Harmonic Convergence, the first jointly designed and constructed human conclave vessel. Below him, Earth rotated slowly, its blue-white beauty still striking despite his many visits. Admiring the view, asked a familiar voice. Zirax turned to see Ambassador Kovacs approaching, now wearing the formal attire of the newly established United Systems Diplomatic Corps. Always, he replied. Though I admit, I was deep in reflection. She prompted, joining him at the viewport, about how close we came to catastrophe. If your defensive fleets hadn't intercepted our attack, he let the thought hang unfinished. Kovacs smiled slightly. Interesting thing about that. I was recently granted access to some classified files from that period. Would you like to know a secret, Zirax? His curiosity piqued. Zirax nodded. Our defensive fleets, she said quietly, were mostly holograms and automated drones. We had perhaps 1/5 the actual combat vessels we appeared to have. Zirax's eye stalks extended in shock. But the damage to our attack fleet, oh, the weapons were real enough, Kovacs clarified. But had you pressed the attack, had you sent your reserve fleets, we couldn't have held. Earth would have fallen within days. The revelation left Zirax speechless. After a moment he managed to ask, why tell me this now? Because tomorrow, the Supreme Council votes on whether to invite humanity to join the Conclave as full members, with equal representation, Kovacs explained. Before that historic moment, I wanted you to understand something important. She turned to face him directly. Humanity's strength has never been our weapons or our deception skills, it's our ability to take risks for peace. When we positioned our meager fleet near your civilian centers, when Admiral Volkov made her speech about demonstrating capabilities, we were bluffing. We gambled everything on the hope that given a face-saving option, the Conclave would choose cooperation over conflict. Zirax felt his three hearts beating asynchronously as he processed this information. You risked extinction on a psychological insight? We did, Kovacs confirmed. And thanks in large part to you, it paid off beyond our wildest expectations. Before Zirax could respond, his communication implant chimed with an urgent message. The text appeared in his visual cortex. Supreme Council emergency session convened. Presence required immediately. I must go, he told Kovacs. The Council has called an emergency session. Her expression grew concerned. The membership vote? Unclear, Zirax replied. Already moving toward the transport hub. I will contact you when I know more. The Supreme Council chamber on Nexus Station hummed with tension as Zirax took his place among the gathered officials. At the center of the chamber, the holographic presence of Councillor Arborin towered over the assembly. The intelligence is verified, Arborin was saying, his voice grave. The Vorrax Collective has mobilized its hive fleets. Their trajectory indicates Earth will be their first target. Rumors swept through the chamber. The Vorrax, a hive-minded insectoid species from the Outer Rim, had long been hostile to the Conclave, but open warfare had been avoided for centuries. They believe humans are the Conclave's weak point, continued Arborin. Their logic is simple. Eliminate humanity, destabilize the Conclave, then expand into our weakened territories. Zirax stepped forward. Counselor, what actions has the Council authorized? Arborin's massive eyes fixed on him. That is why you were summoned, Commander Qualorn. The Vorrax fleet will reach Earth space in approximately 72 hours. The question before us is whether to commit Conclave forces to Earth's defense before the membership vote. The implications were enormous. By Conclave law, military resources could only be deployed to protect member worlds. Earth, not yet officially a member, had no legal claim to such protection. The Council is divided, Arborin admitted. Some argue we should accelerate the membership vote. Others suggest we must observe legal protocols despite the emergency. A third faction proposes allowing the Vorrax to strike Earth, then countering once they move against established Conclave worlds. Zirax couldn't believe what he was hearing. That third option would sacrifice billions of human lives. Indeed, Arborin acknowledged, which is why I have asked you to speak. Your expertise regarding humans is unmatched. If we commit our fleets to Earth's defense, breaking millennia of legal precedent, how will humanity respond? Will they honor the extraordinary trust such an action would represent? Or will they exploit it as a sign of Conclave weakness? The chamber fell silent, all attention focused on Zirax. In that moment he realized just how far things had come. 2 years ago, the Conclave had tried to destroy humanity. Now, the Supreme Council was considering breaking its most sacred protocols to save them. Counselor Arborin, honored members of the Supreme Council, Zirax began, and I need not remind you that I once coordinated an attack fleet against Earth based on fears of human unpredictability. I was wrong then, and anyone who fears human response to our aid would be wrong now. He activated the chamber's central display, showing scenes from the past 2 years, human medical teams treating Pluridian victims of a stellar flare, Earth scientists freely sharing agricultural techniques that had increased food production on 12 Conclave worlds. The joint military exercises where human tactical innovations had improved Conclave defensive capabilities by 30%. Humans have a saying, Zirax continued. Actions speak louder than words. For 2 years, humanity has consistently demonstrated its commitment to cooperation through actions, not just treaties. If we defend Earth now, before legal obligation requires it. We will not create a debt they might exploit. We will forge a bond they will never forget." He paused, then added, "And let us not overlook the strategic opportunity. The Vorrax believe attacking humanity will divide us. Imagine their reaction when they find their first strike met by the combined might of human and conclave fleets. The message would resonate across the galaxy. Threaten one of us, face all of us." Councillor Arborin's leafy crown extended a sign of approval in his species. "Well reasoned, Commander. The Council will vote now." The voting process took less than 3 minutes. The result appeared on all displays, 185 in favor of immediate deployment of Conclave Defense Forces to Earth space. "Commander Qualorn," Arborin announced, "you are hereby granted emergency authority to coordinate our response with human forces. The membership vote is rescheduled for immediate electronic ballot. I expect results before you reach Earth." Zirax bowed deeply. "Thank you, Counselor. I will not fail the Council's trust. See that you don't," Arborin replied, but his tone held no threat. "In Qualorn, remember what you said about a bond humans would never forget. The same applies to the Conclave. This moment may well define our relationship for generations to come." 70 hours later, Zirax stood on the bridge of the Righteous Dominance, the same flagship from which he had once coordinated an attack against Earth, now positioned as its defender. Around him, a combined fleet of human and conclave vessels formed a defensive perimeter around the planet. The Vorrax fleet, emerging from hyperspace, announced a human tactical officer, now integrated into the conclave command structure. 812 vessels detected. 792. Corrected a Pluridian sensor specialist. "Some readings are echoes. Still a bloody lot," observed Admiral Volkov, who co-commanded the defense operation, especially those hive carriers. "Intelligence says each one contains up to 50,000 drone fighters." Zirax studied the tactical display. The Vorrax formation was impressive but predictable. They relied on overwhelming numbers rather than sophisticated strategy. "The status of the planetary shield generators online and at 104% capacity," reported Dr. Jackson, who had helped adapt conclave shield technology for Earth's power grid. "Human innovation at work, Commander." Zirax nodded appreciatively. The integration of human creativity with conclave technical experience had yielded remarkable results. A communication request flashed on the main screen. "The Vorrax Hive Queen is hailing us," reported the communications officer. Volkov and Zirax exchanged glances, except they commanded simultaneously. The screen filled with the chitinous face of the Vorrax Hive Queen, her compound eyes reflecting the light in unsettling patterns. "Conclave vessel," she chittered, "you protect a non-member world. Withdraw and allow us passage. Our quarrel is not with the Conclave." Zirax stepped forward. "Hive Queen, I am Commander Zirax Qualorn of the Galactic Conclave. I must inform you that as of 53 hours ago, Earth has been formally admitted as a full member of the Conclave, with all associated protections and obligations." The Queen's antennae twitched in what might have been surprise. "Impossible. Our intelligence indicated the membership process would take months." "Your intelligence," Volkov interjected, "is outdated. Perhaps you should reconsider your current course of action." The Queen's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. "This changes nothing. The human species represents a destabilizing influence on galactic order. They must be contained." "In Ost?" "An interesting perspective," Zirax replied calmly, "considering humanity has just demonstrated its commitment to that very order by joining the Conclave. While your fleet threatens to violate our sovereign space." The Queen's compound eyes seemed to narrow. "You would risk war with the Vorrax Collective to protect these newcomers?" "We would enforce Conclave law," Zirax corrected, "as we always have. But perhaps there is another option. Ambassador Kovacs has authorized me to extend an invitation for diplomatic talks aboard Nexus Station. The Conclave would welcome the opportunity to address your concerns through peaceful means." The Queen fell silent, clearly taken aback by the offer. After several seconds, she responded, "Deception. A delay tactic while you summon reinforcements." "No deception," Zirax assured her. merely an alternative to unnecessary conflict. Our forces will maintain their current position, whether you accept or decline. The choice is yours, diplomacy or confrontation. Another long pause followed as the Queen presumably communicated with her hive mind. Finally, she announced, "We will consider your invitation. Our fleet will hold position for 12 standard hours while we evaluate diplomatic options." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. "Do you think they'll actually withdraw?" Volkov asked quietly. Zirax's eye stalks angled thoughtfully. The Vorrax are pragmatic despite their aggression. They expected to find Earth isolated, not protected by the full might of the Conclave. Now they must recalculate. And if they attack anyway? Then, Zirax said firmly, they will learn another important lesson about humanity. Volkov raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" Zirax turned to face her, his expression solemn yet somehow pleased. "That the peace treaty may have started as a lie, but it became the most important truth in the galaxy." Around them, human and Conclave crew members worked side by side, a sight that would have been unimaginable 3 years ago. Whatever the Vorrax decided, Zirax knew the universe had already changed irrevocably. The distrust that had nearly led to war had transformed into something unprecedented, genuine interspecies cooperation, and it had all begun because humanity had known the peace treaty was a lie and had chosen to turn it into the truth.